Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com coming to you today from the shores of the mighty River Nile to bring you episode number 26 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn artificial intelligence or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you kind of the homework solution to the homework that I gave you in lesson number 25. And I am going to show you my solution, my implementation of the solution to that homework. And what we did in lesson 25 is we kind of developed an algorithm for learning a hand gesture. So like we could learn a hand gesture and then we could compare it to different hand gestures, and then we could come back to our learned hand gesture. And it did seem to work pretty well. And what the algorithm was that if you remember in MediaPipe, we get for a hand, we get the landmark data for 21 landmarks on the hand. And what we showed was if we looked at just simply the distance between all of the different landmarks of all of the different, the distance between the landmarks on the hand. And if we didn't do all of them, but we kind of picked the important ones like here, and then the base of the fingers and the tip of the fingers. And if we compared the distances between all of those different landmarks, that gives us a pretty good kind of signature of a landmark. And we showed that that algorithm sort of worked pretty well. But the way we did it was we just calculated an error factor for a given hand signal compared to our trained hand signal. And we could see a really big difference in the error between giving the hand signal we had trained on versus giving a different hand signal. And so it kind of gave us the confidence that this algorithm might actually work. Well, what I want to do today is I want to take that concept and I want to actually turn it into a program where we have a training phase that we train on different hand gestures that we're interested in, and then we just let it run and we give it gestures and then see how well it recognizes it. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Well, let me get out of your way. And then what I am going to need you to do is I'm going to need you to fire up the most excellent Visual Studio Code. And I think I can come here and you've got a good view there. And now I will open up Visual Studio Code and we're going to come over here to our Explorer view. Remember, we are working in our Python working folder and we are going to create a new program, and that is going to be opencv-42.py, and the .py is kind of important, and boom, fresh new Python program, just waiting for you to write it. Now, we don't want to start it absolutely from scratch. We want to go in and we want to use that program that we left off with in lesson number 25 because we've done a lot of good work already there. And so what you can do is, if you don't already have that, you can come to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com and you can use this happy little search bar and you can search on something like AI for Everyone, Lesson 25, first attempt at using MediaPipe for gesture detection. And besides the nice video there, we have the little code that we developed. So you can come here, you can click on the little double page icon that will copy it. We will come back to Visual Studio Code and we will paste it. We will try to paste it. If I can hit the control key, there it is. Okay, now we have pasted it. Now let's go in and just kind of remind ourselves what this code does. We've got this this MP hands class. That is the class that we wrote in an earlier lesson where basically it does all the interaction with MediaPipe for you, and it just returns a very nice array of the hand landmarks. And so that way it's very easy for us to directly get to the data without having to remember all of those crazy MediaPipe data structures. All right, then we also created a function that finds the distance. So we pass it a set of landmarks for a hand, and then it creates a two-dimensional matrix that tells you the distance between here and here, here and here, here and here, here and here, between this and all the other landmarks in the first row, okay, of the matrix. Then the second row would come here and find the difference in distance between this landmark and all the other ones. And then the next row would be this one and all the other ones. So basically, this find distances creates this distance matrix, which is the distance between every point and every other point for all of the landmarks. All right. Then what we also did was we created a function, and that second function finds the error. Okay. So if I pass it the distance matrix for a known gesture, and then I pass it the distance matrix for an unknown gesture, it returns to me an error. That error is a number. It is just a number that kind of gives you an indication of how close was this gesture to this gesture, or how close was this gesture to this gesture. And then if the error is small, then you probably have a match. If the error is large, then you probably don't have a match. And then the way we kind of ran it is down here. We're constantly running through our main while loop, and we are either in the training part of the program or we are not in the training part of the program, which would be the recognition part. And so always this is just running, grabbing a frame, doing something, showing a frame, grabbing, showing, grabbing, showing. But as it's doing that, we could either be working on doing our training, or we could work on doing our recognition. Okay, so if training's true, we're training. If training is not true, then we are doing the recognition. We're going to keep that same basic structure there. We're going to keep that same basic structure. And also, we are going to keep these two functions that we had already developed. Okay, I am sorry to spend so much time just on review, but I just want to make sure that you guys just don't come in and start copying me, but you're really understanding and reminding yourself of what we did last week. Okay, so now there are a couple of things that we need to do. I also need to remind you that when we do the error, when we find the error, we don't look at all the points. We find the error based on what we think the key points were. And those key points here were sort of like this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and then this, and this, sort of the wrist and the tips of the fingers, and then where the fingers leave the palm. Those were the points we were going to use, and we called those key points, and that is here. Then we want to start out in training mode, so we set train equal to true. And now there is probably a couple of other things that we need to do. One is we need to have a tolerance that we set, that if the tolerance, if the error is less than the tolerance, then we're going to say that we have a match. If the error is greater than the tolerance, then we're going to say that we don't have a match. So the higher the tolerance, the more likely it is to recognize something, but also the more likely it will have a false positive. So we just have to start somewhere. We're going to say our tolerance is 1500. And that's because, like, if we just taught it a gesture last time, and then if we moved it around, it always seemed to be kind of like less than 1,000. And then if I went to a different gesture, it seemed to be like more than 2,000. And so 1500 seems like it would be a good tolerance. Okay, it seems like it would be a good tolerance. Maybe I should just go ahead and run this to sort of remind you of what this did from last week before we do a lot more changes on it. Okay, there it is. Now I'm going to show you a hand, and so here's the fist, and then I'm going to train it on the power to the people. Okay, and so now you see the error there is like 100, 200, 300, 100, and if I go like this, the error is 8,000. Okay, but you see I'm getting like a few hundred, and I'm getting 3,000. I'm getting a few hundred, and I'm getting 4,000. See, it seems like 1,500 would be a good point to set that error at. And what was flashing up there in blue was the error. Okay, I think that that is pretty good. Now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set up a training. And what we want the program to do is we want to ask you, how many gestures do you want to train on? And then we want to go in and ask the user, okay, name the gestures that you're going to train on. And then the third thing we need to do is then go through that list and train on the list that was entered. Does that make sense? So we're going to start here. And the first thing we're going to need to know is what? How many gestures? NumGest. Okay, NumGest. And we're going to say NumGest. We need to get that from the user, and we need that to be a number, so we're going to change it to an integer, and then we're going to input from the keyboard, and then we're going to ask the user, how many gestures do you want? Question mark and space, so that we have nice formatting. All right, now what do we need? We need to know what those names are. If he's going to do 5 gestures, then give me the name of the gestures that you want to train on. We're going to save those gesture names in an array, so let's go ahead and set that array up. Gesture names is going to be equal to an empty array, because we got to kind of set it up that way. And now what do we need to do? We need to go out and we need to get those gesture names. So we're going to say for I in the range, and we want to start where 0. We want to go where to NumGest, or we want to go to how many times do we want to go? We want to go to NumGest, like that. Got confused about just names. No, names is the array that's going in. So we're going to go from 0 to NumGest, and we're going to go in steps of 1. And then what are we going to do? We are going to prompt. I'm going to go ahead and create the prompt. The prompt is going to be equal to the string name of gesture number, and then I'm going to come here, and then I want gesture of I, but I've got to make it a string. So what I've got to do is I've got to add to that, I've got to concatenate to that the string value of what? I. Now, if I did that, it would say, show me gesture 0, show me gesture 1. I don't want to start at 0, so I'm going to, since I'm interacting with a real world person, I'm going to count starting at 1, and I can do that by just taking string of I plus 1. Now that should ask me that should create a prompt, name of gesture number 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. Now what I've got to do is I've got to input that gesture. So now I want gesture names, which is the array. So I want to append to gesture names. So I'm going to append to that, and then that's not good. I'm just going to say name is equal to input of what? Prompt. So I'm going to give it the prompt I just created. So then it's going to read in name. Now what do I want to do? I want to put name into gesture names. So I'm going to say this array gesture names dot append. And what do I want to append to it? What I just read in, name. Okay. Does that look good? I think that looks pretty good. And then what I want to do is let's just go ahead, and I just want to test this. So now let's just say print gesture names, just to make sure that this much of the program is running, because this is going to be a lot that we're doing today, and we want to be running the program along the way. It makes us feel good to get little successes along the way. And that looks kind of encouraging, huh? Okay. Now it's giving me this, like after I ask the question, then it comes in and gives me this. And so I don't like that at all. So let me just put a wait here. Let me put a a time dot sleep of, let's say, 1 second, just to give it time to set all that stuff up so it doesn't give me this message in the middle of when I'm asking for data. So let's say I want 5 gestures. Okay, what is the name of gesture 1? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. Okay, and then look, I've got an array that has the gesture names in it. That is pretty cool. What did I not like? I didn't like that there was no space after the question. So I need to come back up here, and when I say prompt, I need to concatenate on the end of that. So I'm going to say plus just a blank space like that. And that way the formatting will be a little better. Okay, so I think I have the gesture names at this point. I think that I have the gesture names, and now there's a couple of more things that I'm going to need. So I set up the tolerance up here, right? Okay. I set up the tolerance. I'm going to put this time.sleep somewhere else. I'll put it up here just because I don't want to kind of confuse our code down here. Okay, so I've set up the key points. I've told it we're going to train. I've told it the tolerance is 1500. Also, kind of as I'm going through asking on the training to see how many things we've trained on, like if I say I want to train on 5, well, how many have I done already? I need a counter there, so I'm going to just say train count, and how many have I trained on here? Well, 0, so I'm going to start the counter at 0, and then we'll use this later on, and it'll make a lot of sense. And also, like, okay, like if I train on this and I have training data based on this hand, okay, I have training data based on this hand, but the thing is I want to train on different gestures. And so what I need is I need an array of those training sets. Okay, I need an array of those training sets. And so I need to go ahead and put that together. So I'm going to say my known gestures is equal to an empty array. Now we'll come in and we'll put those training sets in here later, but we got to start off with a blank. We've got to start off with a blank to begin with. Now I think that is most of what I need right there. I think that is most of what I need. Okay, now let's think of what we would need to do next. I think what we would need to do next is on our find gesture. Let's come up here. Okay, we find distances, and let's see, do we really need to do anything with distances? No, I think the distances, okay, the find distances I think is going to be the same. We don't need to do that, anything there. And then the find error, I think is the same thing. But I think now what we need to do is, if I can find the distances, okay, and I can find the errors, now what I need to do is I need to actually find the gesture. Okay, so I need to define this function, find the gesture, and that's going to depend on these distances, and that's going to depend on the errors, okay? But now that I have the hard work done, I can write a simple function that will find the gestures. Well, if I'm going to find the gestures, I need my training data. Okay, I need the things that I have trained on, and that is what? What have I trained on? That's my known gestures, okay? And so what this is going to need to have is, it's going to first need to know the new pose that I'm going to look at, okay? And so that would be the unknown gesture, okay? So I just pass it a random gesture, and I need to then compare it to what? I need to compare it to my known gestures. Does that make sense? So like I've already trained, I've got this array of my known gestures, and then I just throw it a hand, and then I analyze that, and that would be the unknown gesture. So now I'm going to look for unknown gesture in that list of known gestures, if that makes sense. Okay, what else is find gesture going to need? It's going to need to know the key points. Because, right, when we do this, we don't want to look at all the points. We want to look at the most important ones, which are here. Well, if this find gesture is going to do that job, it's got to know what the key points are. And so what else would it need to know? Also, if it's going to return and say, hey, that's the number 1, it has to know what your names are. So you've got to pass it your names. And remember what the names were? We called it just names. Okay, so I've got a list of training data, and then I've got the data for a single gesture. I pass both of those, I pass the key points, and then I pass the name of the gestures. And now we have to look at this unknown one, and we have to see if we can find it on the list of known ones. Well, what else are we going to need? We got to decide, is it a match or not? And so it needs to know the what? The tolerance. Okay, it needs to know the tolerance. Now, what we need to do is I'm going to compare this unknown gesture to all of my known ones. Okay, so I've got to compare this one to the first one, and I'm going to get an error. I've got to compare this one to the second one, I'm going to get an error. I've got to compare this one to the third one, and the fourth one, and the fifth one. So I'm going to have an array of errors. Now, which is the most likely? It's the one where the error is minimum. And then where the error is minimum, I then have to go look and see, well, is it even close enough to tolerance for me to count it as a match? Okay, does that make sense? So I have to find the best match in the list. And then as I find the best match in the list, then I have to decide, is it good enough or not? And so what we need to do then is we need to come in and we need to create that error array. And that's just going to start out as something blank, and then we're going to populate it. Now what do I need to do? I need to step through each gesture. Okay, I need to step through each gesture, and I need to compare my unknown to each gesture. So what am I going to do? I'm going to say for I in range. I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to go through all the gestures. So I'm going to say length of what? Gesture names. Okay, and then I'm going to go in steps of 1 and then a colon. So this will step through each known gesture. All right, so now I'm stepping through them. Now what do I need to do? I need to find the error. Okay, and the error is going to be equal to, how do I find error? I call find error. And the error is going to be find error. And then what do I need to compare? Well, I need to compare the known gesture, and we're stepping through them, so it would be known gesture of I, right? I've got all these known gestures, but I want to start with the first one, then the next one, then the next one. So I'm going to start with known gesture I, and then find error also wants the unknown, so then I'm going to pass it the unknown gesture. Okay, and how does it know that? Well, it gets it from here, right? We pass it the unknown gesture. And then what else does find error want? It also wants the key points, so we pass it the key points. Okay, and the nice thing is now if we want to compare different, like what set of landmarks gives you the most accurate recognition, all we got to do is come down here and play with this. Okay, so now we are finding gesture. So we say the error is find error. Oh, this would have been disastrous. I said known gesture of 1, known gesture of I, and then compare that with unknown gesture, and then pass it the key points. Now at this point, I have an error. Well, I've got to step through them all. What do I do with that error? I put it in my error array. So now error array dot append, and what do I want to append? I want to append that error I just had. And so now I can, with my unknown gesture, I can compare it to known gesture 1, known gesture 2, known gesture 3, known gesture 4, known gesture 5, and then I can see which one of those is the best match, because I'm going to have that whole array of errors. Okay. Now what I've got to do is I've got to go in and I've got to find the minimum error. And so I'll just start by just saying my error. I got to give it an initial value. So my error min, I'm just going to set it to the first one in the list. If it is the minimum one, it'll stay there. If it's not, it'll correct it. But I got to start somewhere. So I'm going to say error min is going to be equal to error array, and I'll just make it the first element of the error array. And then this loop is going to actually fix it. And similarly, I've got to know, well, I've got to keep track of the index. So where is that minimum? Well, that would in this case be 0, because if the error min is error array of 0, then what was the index? It was 0. And now I will actually go through and I will find the error min, and I will find where it is, its index, if that makes sense. Okay, so now we got to step through and find the minimum. So I'm going to say for I in range, where do we start? We're going to start at 0, and then we're 0, 0. Then where do we want to go? We want to go to the length of what? The error array. So we're going to go all the way through the error array, and it's len, length of the error array. And then we want to step in steps of 1. And then what do we want to do? We just want to find that minimum. And so what I'll say is if error array of I, that's where I am now. 1, that's going to kill me if I keep doing that. Error array of I, okay, if that is less than error min, then what do I have? I have a new min. Error min, in that case, would be equal to error array of I. That makes messing up I's and L's and 1's. Woo! I can't tell you how much the time in my life I spent banging my head, because that error, once you make it, it's very, very hard to see. Okay, so if error array is less than error min, then we have a new error min. So error min is equal to error array of I, and then what? We've got to then say the min index would be what? It would be equal to I. That's where we are on the list. This should give us little I, man, little I. What is this nonsense? Stop it. It wants to make it a big I. Okay. Now, at this point, what should we have? We should have the real minimum. Okay, at this point, we should have the real minimum, and we should have what its index is in the list. Okay, so now we're going to drop out of that for loop. We're going to drop out of that for loop. I'm trying to make sure. Okay, but we're going to stay inside this for loop. Are we? Okay, I see what I did wrong. This happens after that. That's not inside there. Okay, so I go through. I had one too many indent. So let's just make sure. So I start this for loop, and what this for loop does is it creates this for loop creates the error array, and then this we just need to do one time. We don't need to do that. Yeah, we don't need to do that inside that other for loop. So this for loop is going to create the error array. Then this is just going to set up for us to find the minimum. And then this one is going to find the minimum. And then after we have found the minimum, what we have to just say is that if error min is less than tolerance, if the error min is less than the tolerance, then what do we have? We have our gesture is going to be equal to error, our gesture is going to be equal to gesture names of what? Gesture names of what? Min index. Okay, because that min index is the position where the best one is. And if the best one is good enough, then where do I get the name? I get the name back in gesture names. So the gesture is going to be equal to gesture names, and it is going to be at the min index. I hope that makes sense. This might be one you're going to have to go back and watch again. But what if error min is greater than or equal to tolerance? Well, in that case, I really don't have a match. So I'm just going to say the gesture name is going to be equal to unknown like that. And I need to put that in the quotes. All right. So it's going to find the best match. If the best match is good enough, then it's going to gesture that name. And if the best match is not good enough, then it's just going to say gesture is unknown. And now what have we done? We have found the what? The gesture. Now we need to do what? We need to return that gesture. We need to return that gesture. So we return to whoever called it that gesture. Okay. Now this isn't going to do anything but, well, I probably need to call this before anything would really happen. I would probably need to call that before anything would really happen. So now what we probably need to do is we need to come down and we need to think about what we are doing if train is true. Okay. If train is true, what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to say, okay, what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to adjust this where during the training cycle, it's asking the person for the next gesture in the list. Here, we were just finding one gesture, and as soon as we defined one gesture, it would make train false, and it would drop out of this, and then it would go and just start doing the recognition. So we've got to adjust this a little bit where it doesn't make train false until we have trained all of the gestures. And so if we come in here, we're going to say if train is true, that's still the same. We're still going to say if hand data is there, if there's not no hand data, we're still going to do that. Okay. But now where it says show the gesture and press T when ready, what we're going to need to do there is we're going to need to make that a little bit better because we're going to have more than one. We're going to have more than one. So we need to put a better prompt here. So what I'm going to say is please show gesture. Please show gesture space and then what? Just names of train count. Now remember we set train count up to be 0. So the first time through this is going to ask for, like if I said the first gesture name was A-OK, it's going to say please show gesture and then this would be A-OK. Okay, then I also need to tell it here, that I'll put a colon there just for good formatting, and then press T when ready. So you prompt the user that once he's got his gesture in place to train on, okay, so I've got the gesture in place to train on, then I press T, and then when I press T, then this would be true because it's looking for a keystroke T, and when that keystroke is T is there, then what do? I take my known, I create now a known gesture, and I do that by finding the distances, and I find the distance in what? In hand data. Because remember, before I even get here, I run out and I get my hand data. And so if I press T now, I pass that hand data to find distances, and then I have one known gesture. Okay, I have one known gesture. Now, what do I want to do with that known gesture? Well, I don't want to print that out anymore. Okay, but now once I have that known gesture, what do I want to do with that? I want to put it in that array, okay? That array of known gestures, plural, okay? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to say known gestures, plural, dot append, and what am I going to put in there? unknown gesture, singular. So as I go through here, what happens as I go through here? I'm building this array of my known gestures. Does that make sense? So it is an array of known gestures. Well, now what if I better not forget to do? Now that I've trained on that, I need to say train count is equal to train count plus 1. I've got to increment that because I've just trained on this one, so my train count goes up by 1. And then only if train count is equal to the number of gestures, only then is my training done. So now I would say train is equal to false. So it's going to train on the first one, train on the second one, train on the third one, train on the fourth one, train on the fifth one. When I've trained on the fifth one, then my train count would be equal to my number of gestures. And now what I need to do is I need to make this false so it will drop out of and not keep dropping into this training portion, and it will do the other portion. That should be if train count is equal to number of gests, then train is equal to false. And now I should take this out. Okay. Now what should this do? This should go out and it should build my training matrix, and I want to run it just to make sure that I don't have errors, that I don't have any glaring errors, the errors that hopefully this will run. Time is not defined. Okay, so remember how I did this time.sleep in order to get the thing where it didn't have that. What is from re-import? That is something crazy up there. Do you think that was important? I have no idea what that was. Let's say import time. We're going to find out what that was. Import time. Had some crazy thing up there. Okay, so now let's run this and just see if it'll run. Okay. And I'm still getting that thing there, so I might have to make that delay longer, but that's still annoying to get that. Okay, how many gestures do you want to train on? I'm going to say 5. It says name of gesture 1. I'll call it 1, 2, 3. Now remember, now I'm not training. I'm just creating that list of the training data. I'm creating the names of my. Creating the names of my gestures, right? And so I believe that was. That was what we call gesture names. Gesture names, I'm filling that out. And so now we'll say 4 and now 5. So now it will know what I want to train on. And now that it knows what to train on, it prints it. Okay, that's good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what's it asking me for? It wants me to give it gesture number 1. Okay, so I'm going to come up here. I'll do it with this hand. I'm going to say that is gesture 1. And so now I'm going to press T so it grabs it. So it grabs it. Now what does it want? It wants gesture 2. Okay, now what does it want? It wants gesture 3. Okay, now what does it want? Gesture 4. Okay, now what does it want? It wants gesture 5. Okay, and now look at that. It's still got that put text on there, but you see, look at that. You see it's kind of recognizing it. Do you see how good it is on a 5 and how bad it is on other gestures? Okay, so I think that kind of hopefully looks like it might almost be working, that we've created now a training data set. We have created a training data set down here. So now that the training part, I think the training part is working. So now we need to come down. So all of this, I think, is working. So now what do we do when we're not training, but we are recognizing? Okay, what do we do when we're not training, but we are recognizing if train data is equal to false? Well, still, we only want to do anything if there is a hand there. We don't want to start passing, hands to something when there is no hand there. Now, what do I need to find? I still need to find my unknown gesture, because now I'm not training. I'm just looking at general ones. I want to find my unknown gesture, and then what do I want to do with my unknown gesture? Okay, what do I want to do with my unknown gesture? What I want to do is figure out what it is. And so here, I'm not going to find the error. Okay, I'm not going to find the error here because the error is found up here. The error is found up here in find gesture. So that work is moving up there. So I'm just going to call that find gestures now. So what I do is I now have my unknown gesture, and what I need to do is I need to pass everything to that find gesture. And so what I'm going to say now is I'm going to say my gesture. What is this gesture that I just threw up? My gesture is going to be equal to, my gesture is going to be equal to find gesture. Okay, what do I need to pass it? Well, it's got to know what the unknown gesture is that I just measured. And then what it's going to need to know, it's going to need to know all my known gestures. Where did the known gestures come from? Up here, right? We built the known gestures up here. Where did I build the unknown gesture? I built it right here. So I'm passing it the unknown gesture. I'm passing it all the known gestures. Okay, I'm passing it all of the known gesture. What does it also need? It needs the key points. And then what else does it need to know? The tolerance, like what number do we count it a match versus not a match? And so remember, we set up the key points and the tolerances. We set up the key points up here and the tolerance up here. I think the 1500 is a pretty good number. Okay, and so now I now know what my gesture is. Well, what am I going to do with my gesture? I'm just going to show it. I'm just going to put it on a put text. So now that I know what my gesture is, I'm just going to put it there. What is the chance this is going to run? What is the chance this is going to run? I hate to even run it this time. How many gestures do you want? And I still have that annoying problem, but we'll worry about that later. I want 5, okay? Okay, I'm going to do this like this. So let's, name of gesture 1 is 1, name of gesture 2 is 2, name of gesture 3 is 3, 4, and 5, like that. Okay, now it wants me to train. So let's bring this up here. Let's try to give it real good training data. It wants to see gesture 1. Okay, I press T. Now it wants gesture 2. Press T. Gesture 3. Gesture 4. And gesture 5. Oh! Doesn't know what tolerance is. What is this nonsense? In line 93, it knows what tolerance is. This is so strange. Okay, let's see. I passed it 4 parameters, my gesture. I passed it 4 parameters. Oh, I forgot one thing. Okay. On find gesture, it wants unknowns, knowns, key points, and what did I forget? I forgot gesture names. Okay, so I got to pass it. Also, I have to pass it gesture names. And right, we did gesture names all the way up here, right? We found the gesture names. That was like the first thing that we did, was to go in and create those gesture names. All right, now let's try it. That was a terrible mistake. Okay, let's say 5. Okay, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so it printed it. I think it's waiting to see a gesture. Okay. Okay, no, all right, yeah, so now it wants me to show it the number 1. So I'll give it the number 1, and I'll press T. Wants 2, wants 3, wants 4, wants 5. Ah, denied again. Line 32. After all this time, it doesn't like line 32. Error is equal to You know what I did here? For row and key points, that's right. For column and key points, that's right. Error is error plus the absolute value. Invalid index to scalar. Invalid index to scalar. In line 32. Do you guys see what I did wrong? Error is 0. Error is equal to error plus. The hard thing for me to understand is I thought we had already done that. So let's see if we can find something else. Something is not being passed right. Okay, it's when I call it, like let's look at line 93 and see what it doesn't like about line 93. So it errored out in there, but this is where the problem appears to be. So my gesture is equal to find gesture. I'm passing unknown gesture. I am passing known gestures. I'm passing key points, and I'm passing gesture names and tolerance. Are you guys seeing what I did wrong? It's like I'm passing it an empty array. Let's see. Maybe this is the problem here. This is known gestures plural. Okay, known gestures plural. And then I said find error of known gesture singular. And so that should be a plural there. And so I just used the wrong variable name there, I think perhaps. So now let's run this and see if this will work. I think that is probably what happened. That one scared me. Because I knew find error should have worked, but I forgot that I changed it. Okay, so now let's put in 5 and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, it found it. Now it is probably going to want me to give it a gesture. Okay, so the number 1, I'll give it there. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there it goes. Look at that. 5, unknown, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you see that? Man, is that cool? Look at that. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4, 3, 2, wrong way, 2, 1, unknown. All right, man, that is really cool. It really scared me because I didn't press the T good, and so it didn't move into the recognition part of it, and that's what the problem was. This is really cool. Okay, let's make it harder this time. So let's see if we can do 9. So I'm gonna run this again. Let's do more. Let's do more gestures. Okay. Okay. Darn it, I gotta fix that thing. Why is that doing that to me? Where do I need to put that delay? Do I need a longer delay in there so that it doesn't do that? Okay, let me do it down here. After I set up the find hands. And let me wait like 5 seconds. So it's going to take longer thing to launch, but hopefully that'll do it. Okay, so now let's do it again. Now it's waiting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so at least now that is good. So I'm going to say I'm going to do 10 gestures. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm going to do power to the people, and then I'm going to do hook 'em horns, and then I'm going to do I'm going to do hook 'em horns. I'm going to do okay. I'm running out of ideas. Power to the people, hook 'em horns, okay. Go forth and prosper. And I need one more. I've got it. No, I shouldn't do that one. I shouldn't do that one. Okay, how about this? Guns up. How about that? Okay, so now it wants me to train now. It's wanting to learn. It's a good student. It wants to learn. All right, and what it wants is it wants 1. Okay, there's 1. It wants 2. There's 2. 3, 4, 5. Power to the people. Hook 'em horns. Okay. Go forth and prosper. Guns up. That one might be a lot like a 1. Okay, look at that. I got guns up. Hook 'em horns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did I do okay? Look at that. Hook 'em horns. Guns up. Okay. Go forth and prosper. Man, is this cool? Is this like really working good? Power to the people. Power to the people. 2, 3, 4, 5. Hook 'em horns. Guns up. Okay, guys. Man, this is exciting. I hope you guys are excited as I am. If some of this stuff was a little bit, if some of this stuff was a little bit confusing, go back and watch the video again, because it's just sort of like, it's the same thing as we did last week, but instead of just training on one thing, we trained on a bunch of things, and then it's sort of like the error correspond, the error in the error array corresponds in order to the name of the gestures, which corresponds in order to the gesture training data. And so everything is kind of indexed the same. And so it makes it pretty cool. So power to the people. Okay, now I'll show you one thing that I can imagine is going to be a limitation here. So like I show you a power to the people. Okay, but I'll show you what I think is going to be a problem. As I start bringing here, it's unknown, and then it's a power to the people, and then it's unknown. Now, what is the difference? The shapes are exactly the same, but what is the problem? Okay, as I'm moving closer and further away, that tolerance isn't working anymore. And so what your homework is, like, man, I'm just blown away. I love this one. This is my favorite one. This should become the new top tech boy symbol. Power to the people. Okay, so what is it that your assignment is for next week is to go in and change the algorithm a little bit, tweak the algorithm where it will work over a greater set of ranges, where it's not going to be just kind of limited to, it's not going to just be limited to a certain distance, but it would work on all of them. Man, I like that. That is really, really, really cool. Okay, guys, leave a comment down below. Is this just so crazy? Is this just so crazy tedious that it's no longer fun anymore and you're just going in and copying what I'm doing? Or is it really making sense and you're following along with me and you're able to kind of start doing this sort of stuff on your own? Let me know down below, because I don't want to just sit here and keep making these videos if you guys aren't learning and if you're not having fun. So for next week, what you do is your homework assignment is to go in and adjust the algorithm where it will, work over a wider range range of distances. Okay, man, I am having so much fun with this. I hope you guys are having as much fun taking these lessons as I am making the lessons. If you enjoyed the lesson, give it a thumbs up. Make sure to leave a comment down below. If you were successful, I am legend. If you were not, I folded up like a cheap lawn chair. Or perhaps you are just a casual observer who likes to watch this as a reality show. But any comments are going to help me get more YouTube juice, and the more YouTube juice I have, the more people YouTube will show this video to. And remember, the world needs more programmers and engineers and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, coming to you from the lovely shores of the mighty River Nile. I will talk to you guys later.